Greetings, fellow wizards. Somebody asked me pretty much what my rack was comprised of, so we're going to have a look at through the modules that I've built. The majority of them, vast majority of them, are on stripboard and they're all DIY. So we'll start off here. This is a Arduino Nano master clock. I did adjust the code just to get a faster BPM. It's got a tap tempo and some subdivisions of the clock for outputs. That's a gate. You can adjust the gate there, the gate length. That's the SM Tic Tac, I think, or Tic. I think that's what it's called. The SM Tic Tac by Synth Mafia. Have a look for that Arduino master clock. Right, next up is another Arduino Nano. This is a dual CV quantizer. Something I came across online. This is way too convoluted to share with you, really. I kind of had to hack it all together to get it to work as I wanted. Each voltage, there's two voltage inputs for each channel with one CV out. They're summed with a buffer on each channel. Right, next up we've got two modules here. They're both the same. These are based on the Kinko synth grains code. Someone uploaded a code for a clock divider and multiplier. This one I've got hooked up to one VCO, and you can do with the multiplication, you can do that ratcheting, or you can kind of divide the steps as well. Anyway, really handy. That's Arduino Nano, and same again, another clock divider, multiplier. This is I've got this one hooked up to. This is one of the modules that I did buy the partial kit for. The transient modules 8S. I really should be using this. I've hooked it up to my second VCO. This should really be used for transposing. I've got the CV out from this going into my quantizer, and I can add two voltages together and transpose stuff. And I've got this hooked up to this clock divider, so we'll just adjust that, and that's it, dividing and making it go slower. And it's highly unlikely I'm going to need that to go any faster, but if I did, yeah, it goes like that. You can imagine that is quite versatile. Right, next up is, there's two modules here. These are both adaptations of Hardcore. So they're Arduino Nano projects. The sketches are free on GitHub, but I did come across one schematic. I've had this on my radar for a while. These are quite new builds, the Hardcore, because there's loads of really useful sketches. This first one is using two Arduino Nanos. This is basically two Hardcores, and each Hardcore is a Euclidean dual sequencer. So I've got four Euclidean sequences, three of them going out to my sequencer. Now I think what I might have, and I probably do like that style, is I think it's a Berlin style of sequencing. So it's just pulses and kind of polyrhythmic rhythms you can get going, and you have the length of each pattern here and the density of the steps. I think there's possibly 32 steps. Anyway, really useful. Once I've got that working, that's ideal. The fourth one I have to use to clock this other hardcore module, which I've adapted the layout for there. So we've got 8 trigger outs. A DAC isn't required for this one. It's only really required for audio and any CV generation. So it would be nice to share these one day. So that's clocked by this, so I can reduce the clock there. Basically, the code I'm using for this one is the step variation generator, I think it's called. So it's got a few different patterns on it. You can cycle through the stepped patterns there, and you can control that externally with an LFO as well, so you can get kind of pseudo random scrolling through those patterns. So it's kind of pseudo random trigger generator. Right, next up we have Look Mum No Computers big button or little button step sequencer or trigger sequencer. Really good module. Check that out. There's all the info's on his website for that. Next up here is the Thomas Henry bass drum. I've done a video on this. I've changed the panel. I've made it smaller just so I can squeeze more stuff in. Next along is the Music for the Masses bass. This is a schematic he shared. He's got a YouTube channel. He's got a great homemade rig. That's done on stripboard, so that's a bass drum, really good bass drum. Next along is another Arduino Nano. This is from the infamous Jan Osman from DSP Synths. I don't think he's online anymore. His websites aren't online anymore. You can probably still get the code. There's 6 lo-fi drum samples, each with a pitch, and one with six triggers. I'm just using 6 of the sounds, so 6 triggers and 1 audio out. Next is my final hardcore module, which I've used the FAC drums sketch and adapted just the layout as to what required here. So we've got 8 drum sounds. They're CV controllable. You can select the drum sound here, and there's pitch and attenuators for the CV control. Finally on this row is the snare drum. I've done a video of that. That's on stripboard, a nice little kind of old school analog snare drum. Next row is the MIDI Muso CV12 kit, very affordable kit. I don't know if he still sells them, probably does. Now I'm not using MIDI, I did try it, but I still like using my homemade step sequencer, but this has 6 trigger outs, 6 CVs, and that's all from the MIDI. I've added here a clock divider as well. I managed to hack in another Arduino to do some clock divisions from MIDI. Next along here, if we can just make it out, that's here. Where are we? That is it's unbuffered multiples. So they're just sockets wired in a smart kind of fashion. Christian Blassel, you might have come across him. I got that off one of his videos, unbuffered multiples. Right, next along here is an envelope generator, attack release envelope generator. Now it's got 2 outputs. One's going to the VCA and one is going with an attenuator to the frequency cutoff. That's quite handy to have. So I've got a full output for the VCA and then an attenuated output for the filter. and that's followed by a duplicate of that. Next along is the these are both Phobos, I think, from Phobos schematics. There's another dual attack release generator there with output attenuators. Right, next along is that's a dual VCA. That'll be a music from outer space VCA, and no, that's just the VCA. Yeah, so we've got in and out on either side, and then your two CV inputs. Right, next along is some Moffensief modular, a tiny 85 chip. The code's on GitHub, and the schematics are on his site, I think. It makes noises. It's not a bad little noise generator. Quite nasty sounding. Can use it as a kind of percussive element, or filter it for some background drones. Right, next along is a music from outer space strip board, state variable filter with some CV inputs for the cutoff, and you've got low pass, band pass, and high pass outputs. Right, next along, music from outer space, harmonic. It's like a ring modulator. I forget what they call it. I'm using two of the spare outputs from my 3340 VCOs just to kind of mangle together, and it gives quite it just gives quite a grungy, slightly unharmonic. What is the word? Cacophonic. Anyway, it gives a nice grungy addition. I put that through an envelope and a VCA. I'm starting to lose my track. Please excuse me. Right, second along we've got, this is a combined dual AR and dual VCA. I've done a video on this. So there's two VCAs and two attack release generators for percussive elements. And lastly on this row is a dual 3-input mono mixer. I use this as a sub mixer, so I've got 3 inputs here and then an output, and I can take those onto my stereo mixer. That's on strip board, and they're pretty easy to build. Music from outer space or synth, I've got some schematics for those. Right, I'm going to call a halt to that for part 1. Join me in part 2.